This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Systemic therapy is a holistic approach that views individuals as interconnected parts of larger systems. Whether it's family systems, social structures, or cultural contexts, systemic therapy recognizes that the well-being of one individual is intricately tied to the health of the whole system. In part 1 of this episode, we got introduced to our guest, Wendy Aimée De Macker, who is a counseling psychologist with extensive work experience locally and abroad, and who currently focuses on relationship and family counseling from an evidence-based approach. Wendy shares with us about her happy childhood growing up in the Netherlands until the age of 15, when a tragic road traffic accident involving her family abruptly upended her family's life, giving rise to challenges which, in a large part, contributed towards her interest in psychology and social work. She also shares about how she came to Kenya, found an opportunity to collaborate with and learn from organizations and individuals providing mental health care and support in informal settlements, and how, in the process, she got hooked by the Kenyan vibe and stayed on. She then introduces us to systemic therapy. Now welcome to part 2 of the conversation. So, and this, I think many of our audience, members of our audience, would be very fascinated. I think there's myths and misconceptions around couples counseling.
You want to do the couple?
Just a bit.
Just a bit.
Just a bit. So obviously,
there's so many, I think.
And I'll tell you what. So. I freak out when somebody talks to me about couples counseling.
Okay.
Why? Because I always feel like I'm going to be undressed in public.
You mean in public in presence of your partner?
So I'm going to be with my partner there.
And the therapist will take sides.
And then there's that fear that the therapist is likely to take sides.
I hear
and
you.
then I'll probably come out of that place not smelling of roses and all that sort of thing. So there.
Yeah, okay.
So
shall we start there, or you also are carrying a myth or a misconcept, or like a fear or a scare?
No, I don't know if I have a fear. No, I did it once. I did couples counseling once.
You did?
And it didn't help. Didn't take.
Okay.
Didn't take. Yeah. I don't know.
So this is the first myth. This is already the interesting one.
Okay, go for it.
Can I go?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go. Okay. That people come in and they think that couples counselors are there to mend or to save your relationship. I don't believe in that, which sounds strange as being a couples counselor.
Okay.
It's like, I can imagine it sounds like a contradiction. I think that's maybe the first myth. I think couples counseling it must be a space, and what I'm more and more getting from my clients, because I do now I'm probably more than 70% of the work is now couples work, and what they say is this is more a safe, a neutral, and controlled environment, and in that space you indeed start to discover a little bit what is our dynamic, and that can lead to that people after a process that they discover maybe this does not work anymore between the two of us, or they say how we did it did not truly work or was not satisfying, but now we have somehow transit into a new dynamic that is way more satisfying, that is way more feels that we're truly connected and together there. So I think that's in the first of course I love it when I see that people transit from more the negative, like dance or dynamic or loop, or some couples call it vicious cycle, to more and positive, more like a real, like warm, real like connected, like or like dance or cycle. But it is not always that has to be like the goal on zich. That because it's not up to me. That's so a relief. It's not up to me to
fix the couple.
To fix or to keep them together, or even decide like what is the best for them. That's even another level that I would never, of course, go. Like it is that they discover, like if they can make that transit from a more negative or more loaded or heavy, like loop or dance, to a more like positive, more warm, more like connected, like dynamic.
So the outcome is not really in question. They will figure out what the outcome is in terms of the practical outcome. But for you, what you want is provide a space where they're able to process whatever is going on, see it in better light, and hopefully that seeing it in better light is going to put them in a place where they're able to decide, even if we are parting ways, it is still a positive outcome.
Yeah, in that sense, because it will create more clarity.
Yeah, I was going to say, move from confusion to clarity.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Thank you for that. That's a good one. Yeah, that is exactly what it is like, yeah.
So what about if someone comes and says, I want my marriage to work?
Brilliant.
It's up to them. It's not you.
No, that's, yeah.
It's up to them. You provide the space.
Yeah, like truly, no matter what, that I think is... So first of all, I think it is very, very brave when people reach out to a counselor, and especially I think a couples counselor, what you also said in line with, what can happen there? Individual therapy feels like, I can even like moan, complain, like, which I always twist quite, because after 10 minutes I think clear, and now we have to like see how we can twist it around, like, but you feel that it is your space, your exclusive place. But indeed, I have couples who come in and they say, my goodness, individual counseling, I can just be, but here suddenly I'm scared to be because it is in presence of my partner. And what can happen there? So I am dealing with like 3 different dynamics, with one individual, one partner, another partner, and what is happening there. And then this is my main client, and that's always what I say, is the dynamic.
Honestly, I think it sounds more fun. If I was a therapist, I'd rather be a couples therapist than
yes, it's brilliant. Like, it's one of the most... I thought I was prepared because I work with highly escalating, intense, as you heard, like complex family dynamics. So I thought, this piece of cake. I went into the ghettos, like also in the Netherlands. I saw young big guys attacking their mother with a dog in between. I thought, I've got this.
Surprised.
I'm fully shocked and surprised by the intensity and the different intensity that I ever met. As being a couples counselor, and it is, it is very intense work, but it is also, that's why I'm in a very intense training like trajectory for the last almost 3 years in EFT, emotionally focused therapy, which really is based on that you go to the core of human existence in the sense of how does the attachment look like. Constantly you go back to the relational aspects as such. And there's so there's so many myths that I also had, for example, that I thought like you start to repair to people. And what I'm discovering is you start to first create awareness. What does a trigger do with, for example, if you trigger me, thank you so much for the trigger, most ideal. That says a lot about me.
Sure.
Yeah, the trigger says everything about me. But most people stay focused on, but you. If you change that behavior, then I get less triggered or less chance that I get triggered, and then we're in a better place. And what I'm discovering is that no, suppose you trigger me, I have to take the trigger up, pull it to myself and say,
what is it about me?
What is it about me that I get so intensively triggered? This is every trigger is unique for a person, because every person is unique in where they're coming from and what they're carrying and where the sensitivities are. So I have to first dive into myself. Then I have to have the guts and the balls to like not only like be aware of it, but also to start expressing it in presence of, in this case, you. And then there, that moment can be that you say, this is ridiculous, and then dismissing. That is like where the intensity comes from. And that is probably, I don't know, help me out, that you say that you get undressed there. They think, oh my God, how can I show my real vulnerability and what can happen there?
You're not sure how it will out. Yes.
Yeah, and being on your own in that exclusive relationship between you and your counselor as individual therapy, it is fully different than when it comes to. But you kill 2-3 birds with one stone.
Would you say, suppose a couple comes to you and they say, hey, we submit to your guidance on this. Would you maybe recommend that they each, you want to see them separately first? And then once you figure them out,
yes, one of them kind of always lying.
Then you bring them together, or did you just do deep end, both of them? How do you go
I'm
about
really pro deep end, yeah. But this is also not only how I'm trained, but also what I believe is that people always have the tendency to back out. They think, oh, but that feels too sensitive, or too vulnerable, or too exposed, or too naked. It's like, yeah, because like. So I always start, and this is maybe also one of the misconceptions. I always start with like a joint session, also with families. Like, and this is also, I also had families, for example, that the mother said, yeah, but the father is not really relevant. Yeah, the father is never home. Like, I never ever settle for that. So it's for me mandatory, and not because I want to be like a pain in the ass, sorry to say, but I really believe that I need to see the dynamics of the system. Doesn't matter if it's a family or a couple. And let alone, there's a whole other discussion that I think that men / fathers, husbands are very much neglected, very much excluded, and like there's a high level of misinterpretation, but I think that's a whole other podcast. When it comes to how do you include really everybody, including the father or the husband and things like that. But you always start, or I always start with a joint session, then I separate, like individual. Rarely I do another individual if there's really a lot of background in a way that I have to get more sense out of, to take with me that if I see that a trigger pops up, I can contextualize it quicker, and I can help the partners okay, so where can that sensitivity come from? Do you have any idea? Yeah, by father, and then you can place it more because you already had that individual session. But from that moment on, there are joint sessions. Sometimes we discover that somebody is, for example, quite on a deeply level traumatized, and that blocks them to be really available and let alone that you can dive a little bit deeper and take the elevator down in a person, let alone how that comes out, how it feeds the dynamic. Then parallel, I can recommend, and I would work together with a colleague who is, for example, specialized in trauma treatment.
I see.
Or somebody has severe ADHD and and maybe delayed diagnosed ADHD, and has to somehow in that process has to have some tools. Then I can also refer them to a colleague who is specialized. Not that I'm not specialized in ADHD, but my couple remains my main client and their dynamic. And I really want to set that free and protect that as such.
Other myths and misconceptions, any that comes to mind?
That undressing, what you said, is very interesting for me. I really believe that a real, how do you say it, couples counselor, I don't know if you can say professional or equipped, is I always go where my client is. and safety, and a real felt sense of safety, not that you put it like on the wall, like and then like in your policy, and like a poster. Feel safe here, but you really, and I constantly screen that somehow, like somehow, is that I will never go faster than your system, almost spirit, soul, mind, heart, can start. How do you say it? Processing. Like in that moment. So, yes, you feel probably exposed from moment to moment, but I will not push it over the edge. I will even like slow down. And I will like, you hope that you have such an alliance or rapport with both partners. That is where the multi-bias comes in. That you check it. And sometimes it is already enough that you say, this must feel quite exposed there. And that somebody can say, yeah, very exposed. I said, yeah, like, my goodness, and how brave that you are here and that you let it see here. But hey, yeah, what comes up now? Yeah, now and I have the tendency to shut off. Yeah, of course, you shut off. Like, that is the functionality that comes in, and that you can then, like, see, and that you validate it, and that it makes so much sense, and it is okay. Like, you cannot, I always say, you cannot squeeze an elephant through a straw. You have to take it step by step, and really, and especially when you, like, how do you say it? If you can together make sense out of it, what then happens in the moment, that you have your tendency or what your reflex is, then it gives so much data, not only for you, but also for your partner, because the partner probably says, yeah, you see, this is always what he does at home. He shuts off, or he goes away, or I see that the counter is closing, like I said, yeah. And then there's another level of understanding that then comes in. So you make use of that sense of, ooh, I feel now, that I'm too exposed, for example. But the undressing, I never go fast. I always and it goes, because that is crucial for creating that safe place.
That sense of safety.
Yeah, that sense of safety, yeah.
Can is it even possible to call out nonsense that hits, I mean, when someone says something that's obviously incorrect or an assertion that is wrong? I mean, can you call it out?
If one partner is throwing the other partner under the bus, at a certain moment I will say no, because that is again connected to the safety. Like sometimes, because then I'm curious where that tendency then is coming from, that I say, I see that you suddenly are coming up with the moment that he was screaming at you, and I'm so curious, like, what is happening now? I feel that you're derailing from, and mostly it's derailing from their own vulnerability. So they start pointing fingers again at the partner. And that's how everything is relational. It's like, yeah, I said, was it a difficult moment that we just stayed a little bit close to what was happening within you? Yeah, like, yeah, because that's mostly it's all deflecting.
Right.
Humor is deflecting, starting to point in a tense level, like pointing fingers at your partner is deflecting, like, and not because you do not maybe have a point there, but in the process of going to what is happening within you, that can be very, very strategic methods. And not out of ill will, but because, they feel that they have to start, like, connecting to themselves. And that is a very scary journey.
Do people ever, like, get more upset after coming to a session? Like, we're out of here, that's it. That's a very interesting.
I've definitely, and I worked for a total 20 years as a family counselor, and that's for me like I blindly, almost I can guide that process. Couples counseling is like, let's say, for the last like 4 or 5 years. So it is quite. I'm the new kid on the block there in a way.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is that I don't patch it up, like, and that I didn't consciously take enough time there to patch it up, and that people feel, especially in presence of each other, exposed. So there's still a lot of work to do on my side, I think. And sometimes it's also that that's also what they say, the most intense sessions sometimes also like resonates. And I'm sometimes also surprised how people come back and say, wow, that was intense, but my goodness, things became more clear.
Yeah.
Not only within ourselves, but also between us.
Yeah.
So I'm still figuring out how I can really guard that process as good as possible, in all honesty. Yeah.
Do you ever feel just building onto that question, that some of the attempts at couples counseling fail? Do you are there instances you say, this one I failed here, or this one didn't work?
I think
how do you get success?
Yeah, I think it starts somehow with there is exceptional is when you have a sense that people are not there sincerely in the core because somehow they want to see if they can repair, but because they're there because it's part of a strategic plan. And that sounds a little bit cruel, because somehow they're leading up to somehow they already have the hidden agenda that maybe probably this goes in a direction of separation and divorce. And in court, it sounds quite need to go to couples counseling.
Sounds like this sort of therapy sounds like you're walking into conflict. Like with one person, like there's a sense of like this. It's not me versus you. It's not the therapist versus the customer, the client, or whatever. But in this case, there is a versus. They're in the room. There's conflict right there. So you're starting at a place of conflict. So like it feels like you have to have this verbal jujitsu sort of ability to. It would take a lot of time to really figure it out. And I imagine even if you did it for 30 years, you would constantly be hitting things that are just like out of the blue.
Oh, that's another myth. Thank you for that. Yeah, no.
Okay.
So
yes.
what I do, yeah. So what I'm discovering, in this last years that I'm in this really intense training process, is that based on more than 35, sometimes 40 years of research, that love is way more, let me put it like that you can create way more understanding around love, and that dynamics between two people, are quite predictable.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. So of course everybody comes with a unique story, and...
So what you're saying is you will get better with time. It doesn't get... You won't constantly be faced with unpredictable things. It's all pretty...
No, it is and it is marvelous that there is a whole model out there based on that intense scientific research that gives you this framework, and that you start to... And the interesting part, the moment you start to loop your couple in, for example, the dynamic that comes alive, and it always comes alive, and it is draining and devastating, and you always think, here we go again. All couples say yes. Yeah. And it leads to nothing. And it is always hits in that end, And then you start to explain, well, mostly in the classic dynamic, there's a pursuer, somebody who hody, and will not almost let go and wants to keep on talking because if the distance is felt, then they panic, so they start to that's the pursuer, and then mostly there's a withdrawer, and then you see the couple literally yes, so what do you recognize? You want to go further? It's quite, and then you can see even how the pursuer and the withdrawer is starting to feed each other, and intensify. So naturally, if you're a pursuer, if you're dealing with a withdrawer, it even gets amplified, and the other way around. The withdrawer, when he's dealing with a pursuer, gets also naturally, organically, gets also amplified by checking out.
I read about this in Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
The
well and the cave.
The well and the cave.
Yeah.
But it's both
so
white.
one of them is in the well, and they have to be drawn out. and then one of them's in the cave, and you have to leave it alone.
Yeah.
So you can't pursue that one, but you have to pursue that one.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And
That's
the idea.
Yeah, and it is almost like a relief for couples to hear
oh,
I'm
not weird.
Yes, so this is good news that it is predictable. When it's predictable and it's being researched on, we can also find a way out.
And there's quite a bit of a lot of it goes back to childhood, right?
I think how you
a lot of the
attachment styles, how do you say it? Carry yourself as an adult in how you respond to intimacy. I think that that goes quite back to childhood, but it's not.
It's not always the case, because
No.
sometimes it can be something could have happened in the intervening years or within the relationship itself.
Exactly, yeah.
That sort of makes you want to cope by being either this or that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I also know that depending on the attachment styles from childhood, usually it's like the issue of attachment goes dormant as you grow out of childhood. And then when you want to couple, and then something is triggered by it's like your fears of abandonment and rejection and all those things become
can come alive suddenly.
Yes.
Yeah, like I have sometimes brilliant, very successful clients say to me, I was so good on my own. I was doing life in a very successful way, and now I have no clue what is happening to me. I'm crumbling. And I said, you go from independence to interdependence. And interdependence, we all want to be really experience that real sense of connection, but doesn't mean it's easy, to find that sweet spot. Between you and your real loved one, it's a journey as such.
Can you imagine a super independent person have adopted that as a coping mechanism for never wanting to depend?
Yes.
And
then I'm also very I know there's a whole movement, and especially around women, and probably I'm not going to score any points here, but that about self-love and self-care. And I think it's what are we talking about? I think, of course, there is an element that you have to feel your own worth as such. But, I think you always will be shaken up the moment you step into an intimate place with somebody that you truly, deeply want to feel connected and be loved by. So we will be shaken up. I can do all the work. That is also what some people know. But I first have to be Zen before. And I think, you can be Zen completely. Watch the moment you step into
it's still going to be that way.
You're still going to be so why not just
do it
take
anyway.
up the chance and do it anyway?
And then learn.
And then learn, learn, because that's what I mean. You kill a few I say mosquitoes with one stone. As being part of a couple, you of course learn each other, but first of all you learn yourself in that dynamic that you face with your partner, because it feels so precious.
As we close, because I'm sure we have...
I have no idea,
so as we close, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We are at that place where I think for some people the idea of coupling is beginning to sound like it's too much work. What they'd rather do is possibly find a way of meeting some of their needs in sort of transactional way. And it's gaining currency. And people are beginning to feel like it might be the way of the future. Some people would even...
do you recommend relationships?
Wait.
Me being a couples counselor, that's an interesting
This is really
one.
the way to go.
I think maybe you've just cut through the chase. I think that's the question. I think maybe that's the question I'm asking.
In all honesty,
Yes, please be honest.
As in, what's the point?
Absolutely, yeah. Finally, the moment is there. No, like, yeah. I think we cannot be without relationships.
You know what we mean. You're dodging the question.
Yeah.
Should people get married or not?
Yeah, and it is not about the marriage.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not about the marriage. No.
All right, a committed relationship
yeah.
between two people. Should they do that?
I think it's the...
Is it 50-50?
No, I think it's
we're hardwired, you reckon, for intimacy in that way. Do you
completely hardwired. I think if we don't keep on daring, like stepping into that space, then I think it is a true loss in the end. I think we all truly, sincerely, like deeply want to be loved. Like, yeah.
What about being loved by just an audience?
I really think that it's very yes, and I always like is that then only in a romantic, intimate relationship, or are there different forms that you can feel that
are you willing
same
to answer the question?
Okay.
Okay, let me just
I think there
let me
can
make
be,
it really practical.
Yeah.
There was a day, I don't know how long ago it was, when there was an individual or a couple individuals who wanted to be close to me. Mm-hmm. Lovely women, great people. And I was like, I was kind of bristling. Like, I don't know if I really want this, but clearly the connection was at least in one direction, coming at me. And I went on stage and I was performing comedy, and it was great. And I got on, the guy's here, I got on the back of the motorcycle and I put on the helmet and we were going down the road and I went, I want the love of that audience more than I want the love from that woman.
Yeah.
And then I thought, is that terrible? Like, what's wrong with me? Am I okay? What do you think? Yeah. What do you think? Now, and I could go either way at that.
I think you can have okay, let me put it
so
like this.
Now let's take me out of the equation and just answer the question in sort of a hypothetical.
Okay, let's put it like this. If my partner, let me put it like this. If I have to satisfy my partner on all levels for the next 30 years, it's exhausting, that idea alone. So yes, you need, I think, and the other way around. My goodness, I don't want that he has to fulfill all my needs and and satisfy me on all levels possible. I think we're wired to be connected to different people, like that feels close. I get something from my close friends, from my colleagues, from being here, I really think that we are really when I say we're wired to connect, we are really wired to connect to so many different ways of building relationships. So I'm not pro that only the romantic, intimate relationship can is the Valhalla and can satisfy us. I think even if you have that, you need all these other sensations that are being brought and being part of that connection. At the same time, I think that can really, 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 really reach very far. And at the same time, I think there is something to say about the real precious element when it comes to romantic, intimate relationships. Again, I'm not saying it has to be between two people. We didn't even talk about being polyamorous and what that means and things like that. So it can be completely non-conventional there. But there is something to say in that people dare to step into that space and say, this is me in all my nakedness and vulnerability. And I just fully trust you, surrender, and be with you in also not only seeing me, but also carrying me and holding me. And the other way around. There's something to say for. Can you label that as a romantic, intimate relationship? Probably in most cases.
Yeah.
Is it possible in other types of relationship? I would not exclude anything there.
Right.
But that level of
we're talking about your recommendation.
I think it can be heaven, and I think at the same time, what I see as a couples counselor, it can also be a dreadful, sometimes complicated process. And I can imagine that people back out of it, that they say, well, how? To reach that point, that you can really sincerely feel that safe, secure emotional bond, yeah, that is. That
I mean,
will
you see so much of it. I mean, you still feel like, I just wonder if, are people happier?
You mean being as part of? I think, yeah, that sounds like, yeah. I think people can be very deeply unhappy if they don't reach that sweet spot, as I call it. Yeah, I think that can be devastating. And I see people really, really suffering, like, yeah. And then I think, woof, yeah, then you can wish sometimes, like, oh my goodness, it's okay to let go. Like,
Yeah.
Does that mean that the longing is being chased away or being numbed for that real deep connection? No, I don't think so. I think we always have that longing.
So in other words, a particular relationship may be dysfunctional. It may not meet your needs, and you might want to back away from it. But the need is still there.
The longing, the deeper longing,
is still, and
will never disappear.
Okay.
Like, I think that for me, the intensity that I see in my room, for me, is a reflection of that deeper longing. Because if that intensity is not there, yeah, then you already like are zoomed out.
Yeah.
So it is for me the real proof of that deeper longing as such, like. That, and it is packaged mostly in ways that you think, okay, I don't think that this is truly your message, but it is packaged in a way that you or protest or you protect. That's it. Like, so it is packaged in ugly ways, but it says in the deeper sense something about the longing that people really. I scream, I nag, I criticize, but because I so deeply want to connect with you, and I feel somehow that is not happening, so I get more threatened within myself, so I get more activated, so I nag more. Not only nagging, I come with contempt, with passive aggressiveness, or with like, and meanwhile, that longing doesn't fade out or it doesn't die.
So if the longing is still there, are there relationships that like actually do have a period where where the needs are met and the people are coming at each other as equals and they are in a sense healthy in the relationship, and then somehow an experience or a thing happens in their lives where that diverges?
Yeah.
Is it always? I know it can come back together, but can all of them come back together? If they ever did have a place where it was healthy and the way it should be, and there is a diversion, can all of them actually get back to that point? Or do you think some of them just really do have to just stop?
Yeah, that's a very... Yeah, sometimes something happens that in the core, the foundation is being shaken up. They call it an attachment injury or trauma as part of the relationship. I think it can happen, of course, to every relationship, but I think it's how you somehow learn how to process it together. That is the essence. That's the essence. So they also say unprocessed fear tweaks behavior. So if you don't learn how to process things somehow in close enough, then the distance can grow and the disconnect can intensify. Yeah. And then sometimes it can become too late, and that's,
I see.
Yeah. So it is really like how people somehow learn how to step towards each other. But that needs sometimes a little bit of like guidance or a little bit of,
Is it true that relationships that start later in life tend to be more successful?
Oh, that I don't know. That's a brilliant question. Yes, that would be a very nice question. What I only know is that when there is a stronger love narrative and a stronger like love story, that is a prediction of if people are like,
What do you mean love story, stronger love story?
How people meet, it's very interesting, like, and how the relationship like is being like, how they say it, formed in a way. So if you meet a woman and within 3 months she's pregnant, and that's the reason why people like will not always say like that is like a ticket to failure, not at all. but that you have circumstances that you're a little bit more, oopsie daisy.
Circumstances outside of each other.
Yeah. Or it's somebody, people meet, I had one couple and they said like, we had not 1 cent, but we were living off air and love. And they were like really like more and more discovering each other, that you really feel that connection, and also being friends and really like stepping into life and having these adventures. Yeah, that can like lead to like a stronger foundation as such. You have a little bit more like that you can lean into when the times get rough. Like, yeah. So that's from the Gottman like research. That when the love narrative. Yeah.
What about disparate couples and one is on a second marriage and one is on their first? Does that have a higher place of conflict or success or something like that? Or
if you talk about blended or patched families, and that couples,
let's say, I suppose that would be most likely.
So mostly when there is like children from a previous marriage, patched and blended families, or the how do you say, the dynamics that the couple then has to like relate to is way more complex. Yeah.
I just think it's wild, and I just think. Because sometimes when you're dealing with, it's a four-way, isn't it? Like just the adults in the relationship, or that's four-way traffic. Yeah. But then there's the children, and that could be maybe 3-3. So there's all that going on.
Yeah, and I have some couples stepping into my spaces, and they specifically say, we are a blended family and we want to make this work. Help us out. Yeah, and then you have to deal with this extra dynamics around it as such, which you constantly have to include also in how that couple then in the end is working together to relate to these different like families. But you also have like a couple that comes in like when it comes to an extended family or living in a joint family, for example, and what that means also in this context.
There's a movie called 4 Christmases where it's a couple and both of their parents are divorced, so they have to have 4 Christmases.
Oh yeah.
It's a comedy, of course, but you can imagine it's probably not funny at all.
Yeah.
What about people with no parents? What about no in-laws?
You mean like a couple with no? They passed on, or like
some? Yeah, passed on, orphans, whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting because let me tell you something. So my mom died when I was 15. My dad when I was 18. So by the time I was getting married, after that I sort of just a lot of things I just tried to figure out by myself. I wouldn't say I had, in hindsight, I wouldn't say I had like role models or people to look up to, people to guide me and help me in decisions. So it was just me trying to figure my way through life. And then now when I went to meet to visit my wife's family for the first time, there was the question of, what about your family? What about my family? And interestingly, we're not, as siblings, we weren't as very coherent or very, we were just, again, everybody sort of trying to figure their way out. And there was this real weirdness in my mind for the first time, thinking, wait a minute, what does one do when how does one process this whole business of being by yourself in a setting where the other side is coming full house? And then that dynamic has always persisted, where you sort of feel like you're a lone ranger in a setting where
No, but I think then I'm not sure. Like this, so the couples always come like with their challenges as such. Like, and it can be around sex, money, family, parenting. Like, to just a few pillars. So in the mythology that I got fully fascinated by is that it is never really about the content in what people have to find a middle ground in, but it is how they find the middle ground.
Yeah,
if you find in
sense.
how you find the middle ground,
Yeah.
then because I get also emails of that people say, yeah, we're so different, it's like almost impossible. And I think, first of all, everybody is different, first of all, to start with,
Yeah.
let alone backgrounds. But how do you somehow find that mutual ground, that there is that space of seeing where the other person truly is coming from, and that it makes more sense. Like my partner said this morning when I'm talking about, for example, the dynamics of my nuclear family, and especially between my mother and I, then my partner is saying, it helps me to understand you more, and then see where your triggers are coming from. I think that's that, and as long as you can, if you find yourself in that space of that partners keep on being somehow feel space enough to stay curious there, then I think you're good to go. Doesn't matter what life throws at you somehow.
The interesting thing, talking of that, is tradition, culture and tradition sometimes presents a massive barrier to that openness, because you might find you're coming into a relationship where people they have everything spelled out for them from a cultural standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And then you might even be coming from a different culture, and then you also might not be a person who has a blueprint, a cultural blueprint to follow. So the thing is, you might be the one who is most interested in having like that sort of a curious and more open approach to finding the middle ground, a way for things to work. But this other person is hidebound in their culture and how they do things.
Yeah.
So it becomes very hard, because every time you're saying, how do we fix this? They have their rule book. You're saying, but can we create a rule book?
Yeah.
So that's also very interesting.
Yeah, and my question would be, if that one partner who goes by already the set rule book designed by culture, if you stick to that, and it would lead to that there is less connection with your partner.
Yes.
Where what?
So I see.
Is it like what? That is quite an important moment to really reflect on. It's like the same as a parent and a child. I worked a lot with parents from all over the world, but Turkey, Morocco, Afghanistan, name it.
Maybe that's what the Bible refers to as unequally yoked. I think in that context, it's about religion itself, but I think maybe it's really speaking to culture.
It's the same.
It's a tricky yoke to have.
Yeah, but if that means that's you're losing your partner, or you're losing that connection, like also with a parent and a child. I had many teenage girls from Morocco who would run away from home, and I had to intervene, mostly also with a male colleague but how do you they're always, people never really want to, I think, let's say that between the parent and the child, you never want to lose. That's there's no exit there. That people can think that, but I don't think there is a real exit there. So you have to somehow find, somehow a way of, at least giving a little bit of space or a little bit of respect in where one person or other person is coming from.
This is where the systemic work is really especially important, I suppose.
Yeah.
In dealing with this kind of dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
And I think a lot of probably, but that would also mean that the culture is so important, because maybe being challenged also, suppose you would not stick to that culture, what can happen there? That probably comes with a lot of fear of unknown or unknown territory, or like, but then maybe yes or no fed by religion, but then it can lead to doom or like, so, or rejection of the bigger family or the community, like, so there's a lot at stake. My goodness, So I would dive into like why it is of such crucial importance for one partner, like in presence of So there is hopefully a little bit more understanding, but also the other way around, like in the hope that somehow there can be a little bit like, I don't know, like. Shaken up is a big word, but a little bit like poked.
Just yes.
Pinching and poking, like, And that what does it mean not only between you, but also for the next generation? Like, But that's hard work,
It is.
I could see.
It is.
So we had this conversation earlier. I was before the podcast, I was with some comedians, and we were talking about how culture can be an interesting dynamic in a relationship within a family, because a woman was telling me, a woman who's a successful Nairobi businesswoman, she said, well, if we go back to upcountry, my little brother, he's gonna beckon for me to bring the basin and wash his hands, and I'm like, what? She said, well, it's the culture. I'm like, but he's also like a forward. He's a forward-thinking Nairobi businessman who's just using that as a crutch to be a jerk, to his sister, because he doesn't actually want that tradition. He's actively pursuing a different way of life, but yet, as a form of sort of laziness, sort of falls back on like, hey, sister, take care of me. And I'm wondering that could easily be sort of an excuse and for relationship behavior. As a convenient excuse.
So,
couldn't it? I mean,
let me interject with an observation, because I know exactly what you're talking about. So, and what Wendy had also alluded to earlier is the challenge sometimes is this, just depending on how conservative the community is in the rural area and what they stand for. And there are some communities which are super conservative. So a man, for instance, from the time, say, you go for initiation, I think you're typically in puberty, from that time, maybe you spend a month or so in some bush somewhere, and then you come out and you have been indoctrinated in what it means to be a man and the things you can and cannot do. For instance, in some communities, a man should never, ever be near a kitchen. Thou shalt not step anywhere near a kitchen. Now, when you're in Nairobi, in the safety of your apartment, you do all that. When you go back home, the entire community is watching. Okay.
It must be so conflicting.
It is.
That was such a difficult balance.
It is. So you have to go there and be a man. You sit in there under the tree and wait to be served and all those things, and just for everybody's sort of peace and safety, just comply.
But have you ever? I guess my question is, could that be weaponized?
All these things get weaponized. All of them.
From my perspective, it's more that I think we're always part of a bigger.
It's systemic.
It's an entity, and rejection can be around the corner on all these different layers of from a systemic approach. So do we always then have from that fear of rejection, do we then always
sometimes
have the luxury to protest or to push back? Yes or no? And is it then worth it? And which battles do you choose? I think when I was working, for example, with quite some Islamic families, and that's indeed that mostly the daughters would protest and run away, or I always brought them back into their system, into their community, and I said, this is where you have to find your way. This is where small steps of revolution can happen, and only you can do that. So I think change
has to be managed very carefully.
Very carefully, and by the people itself, and then their own pace. And I think it is inevitable because everything is changing as such.
Yeah.
So I really feel that we have to be very, very mindful when it comes to that process.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we're not officially married, but it feels like that. My father-in-law,
Yes.
He's the son of a priest, so his son is his grandson is the grandson of a priest. Of course, the grandfather already passed on, but I know from where he's coming from here in Kenya is that, and my partner has dreadlocks. That when he was growing up, and also his younger brother, that his father was questioned because they are the grandsons of a priest, and and the grandfather had quite a prominent place in that community. And I know that his father, when questioned, would push back. I said, "This is my son, and is there something wrong here?" And I think only through those kind of conversations and pushing back in the sense with respect, still staying part of the community, I think then things can change, slowly. And I'm not saying, I don't even know in which direction change must happen, but evolve. Let's put it like that.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Because I really like what you said there, because sometimes when you remove, if there is some sort of rupture, and through protesting in a way that then you rebel and leave, then there's a whole support system that you abandon.
Yeah.
Estrangement is a very painful thing. It's not. It should be a thing you don't resort to lightly. Mm-hmm. Okay, because sometimes even when you're rebelling and you're going out here, you might find that wherever you are, it's not a system you understand either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a delicate balancing act. And then the other thing that I always want to be cognizant of is there are different levels. There are some cultures which are more socially integrated. The individual then becomes, I think I've not phrased that properly, but what I mean is the individual in certain cultures is sort of more, it's like society trumps the individual. There's that sense in which always it's the community first. Mm-hmm. You have to sort of, blend in and be, But when you come to, say, in the cities, in the urban areas, from a more Western standpoint, you're an individual and you do your things and you assert yourself and you feel. So then what happens is, if you're a wise person, is that you always need to know, when I'm in the city, I can assert myself, I can do all those things. When I go back there, to assert myself in the same way would probably be harmful to everybody concerned. Mm-hmm. So it's a delicate,
Wow.
Yeah. I think, because it is
and
it is what it is.
there's a bigger responsibility that goes beyond you.
Yes.
Because
you don't want to be the person who then sort of creates this crisis within your community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's my take. I think we need to...
Sorry.
Whoa, we've been at this for how long?
17 hours.
24 minutes.
Wendy, I think, thank you so much. I suspect we will need to have another session on men.
Yeah, and I really often think that I have balls, but I checked it. I do not have them, but I feel like I have them. And then I always feel a little bit awkward, like, who am I as being a woman? But I'm very, very passionate about how men are being included as part of the solution in moving forward. like when we're talking about, because in a way, very simple, I'm trying to facilitate to let people reconnect. And I think men are probably like, I think really, but I'm not a man, but I see it like working with young men, dealing with fathers / husbands, like that. I think it's a group of the human species that is very misunderstood and also neglected. Like, yeah. So I'm very passionate.
I certainly don't understand myself. So
yeah, well,
I don't get it. I say dumb things all the time, even on this podcast. My assumptions are often wrong, but then I don't get challenged the way I wish I would, per se, you know. And I think there's a lot of just like lack of clarity.
Yeah, and misinterpretation, and I think there's a superficial sometimes like stereotyping when it comes to how they are, the richness of like how they feel. Yeah, exactly, in how they experience intimacy or sex. That is also simplified by a lot of people that so I'm very passionate about men and how men truly are being seen, but also how men are being, how do you say it, guided maybe is not the right word, but like
whether they're getting adequate guidance.
Yeah.
Like are they receiving the support and the information
that they're very much in need of. And
I think it's tricky to find advocates for men. I've noticed in dating, there's a drastic difference between dating a woman who has all sisters as opposed to one that has older brothers and a good relationship with her father. Like it's so different.
Yeah. And I think it even goes like also being a counselor. I'm very much at ease with men. I love hanging out with men. I love working with men. Like, and there is something to say. And I always go back to my father, because my father and I had a really strong connection. Like as in the first 15 years, but even after that I always truly felt that connection. I think because I was always around him, on top of him. Yeah. Teasing him, he was teasing me, having heated discussions in my teenage years and later. I think because I was so at ease with him, I think that created truly the foundation, let alone have an older brother. Yeah. Like truly the foundation in how I can relate to men.
Yeah, you see the difference between like, he just messed up, he's dopey, as opposed to he did something terrible to me. You know, and it's like, no, I'm confused. But like a woman who's been around a lot of men, it's just like, I get it. A sissy, my brother used to do that sort of thing too. You know? I want my dad to, can roll their eyes as opposed to get upset. Yeah, and that sort of camaraderie, it's something special.
Oh, interesting.
But that's not super common. I don't think. You know.
So we're going to set aside another 3 hours, because I think...
Yeah, let's start. Can you guys just restart the tape? We'll just do it right now.
Super critical
no, it is.
Topic.
But again, I'm not a man, as you can see.
And that's the point.
So again, who am I? But I'm still fascinated. And there's also, I think also in this context, something about the intense investment of the girl child, and I always, from a systemic perspective, thought you cannot train one leg and the other leg you just leave it hanging. Yes. How can you then imagine that people keep on walking like? So I think there's also a huge intense neglect on so many levels when it comes to like including men as really moving forward.
For us to create a viable society. Yeah. We have to start addressing the question of men. Yeah. Now I need to let you go home.
Yeah. We have things.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure.
Yes, same here. Same here. Yes.
I told you.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Thank you so much.
When we started chatting about this podcast episode, at first Wendy was like,
Yeah.
I told her it's just a conversation. It's going to work out look, it's worked out very well, hasn't it?
I really loved it. Yes, I was very hesitating. I thought, whoo, I don't want to be in the picture. I just want to be backstage and do my thing. But I love to talk about my work. That is, of course, my passion. The systemic work, specifically relationship and family counseling. I think there's so much to say for. Thank you for this this moment, this long moment. It was a true pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So Darren typically does our closing. By the way, he has a very fantastic voice, doesn't he?
Yes, I cannot say no. With that introduction.
Thank you, Charles. It's been a pleasure.
So there's a time someone had the intro, the podcast intro.
Yes.
Where you do the yes. And they were like, who's this guy? Anyway,
I'll be doing stand-up comedy at the Chemi Bar in the next 45 minutes, so you can come visit me there and hear my soothing, silky voice. Thanks, Charles. It is nice, and it's a pleasure to always be here with the Me I Mental podcast, and it's great to have a space where the two of us can talk, but also invite other guests to come in, and warts and all. I think sometimes I feel like I have a lot of preconceived notions about what mental health is and how therapy, counseling, psychology, and psychiatry work. And this is a great place to actually just really learn, because what you said in the very top was that curiosity seems to be the driving force in your life. And I feel like that's the most attractive quality of a person, is how curious they are. And maybe it's not always appropriate to rate people, but curiosity makes me rate them quite high, because I too am curious. And in that process of being curious and being in the podcast is knocking down preconceived notions and learning new things all the time, and feeling the freedom to actually speak it out. And so this is a great thing. And so there's more at meimental.me, where you can see the other podcasts that we've done in the past. Some of them are very, very specific. Some of them are generalized, where we talk about just general things altogether. But most of all, we are just here in this space getting more people to talk about mental health, not as something that is like a mental illness that you have to be hospitalized for, but thinking of mental health as something like going to the gym, a muscle that needs to be flexed and stretched once in a while in order to keep sharp. And that is what mental health is about. And of course, therapy and couples therapy is got to be a huge part of that for those of us who are in relationships. So we encourage you also to seek actively to pursue mental health, whether it is with a professional or listening to a podcast like this, to peak and keep your curiosity satisfied. Having said all of that, which I don't know what I just said, thank you so much for bearing with a 17-hour podcast, and we'll see you next time at Me I Am Mental, the podcast. Thanks.
Thank you, and bye-bye until next time.